Put my phone on Do Not Disturb because my
Good
dad is
afternoon.
quite a talkative mood today.
Thank you so much for joining us today for Crossroads. Crossroads is a monthly luncheon of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa. We have a similar luncheon in Cedar Rapids called Intersections. And I'm very glad that you can be with us either in person or online. This is the biggest crowd that we've had since we've been back from pandemic, whatever, not pandemic over, but pandemic life. And so we're really glad to have you in the room and also online. And particularly as we talk about what's going to happen moving forward from a progressive point of view. And so we are delighted to have leader Jennifer Konfrst with us today. And Representative Konfrst has been in the legislature since 2018. She was elected to office, and she has been the leader of the Democratic caucus since the summer of 2021. She's lived most of her life in the Des Moines metro area, leaving it briefly as a child, moving to northern Iowa and then out of state for a while, but most of her life in metro Iowa. So she is a good person to not only represent her district, but to lead the Democratic caucus in the Iowa House. She also is a journalism professor and communications professor at Drake University, has worked for Iowa Public Television. I always have to look because I never can remember if it's television or radio, but television.
They're both great.
And so she is well-versed in all of the issues that are going to be before the legislature this coming year. We're going to talk a little bit about election and the past election, and then also the coming legislative session. And will you help me welcome Leader Representative Jennifer Konfrst?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to come up here because I'm an only child who loves a stage. Is that okay with everyone? Hi, I'm Jennifer Konfrst, as Connie said. Thank you for that warm welcome. I did work at Iowa Public Television for 14 years, and you might have seen me asking you for money on Iowa Public Television during festival, telling you that if you didn't donate to Downton Abbey, we wouldn't run any more episodes, you know, that kind of stuff. And I don't work for them anymore. I ask for money for different things now. But you should call 800-779-7000 and pledge your support to your network today, because they truly are the place that helps you educate, inform, enrich, and inspire Iowans. Not that I have a thing or two, not that I ever said that a million times. But I'm thrilled to be here. This is also my home church. I was confirmed at Plymouth way back. Those of you who have been here, who went here, Faith Foray confirmed me, married my husband and I, and baptized both my babies. And so this is our church. This is where we grew up, and both my kids went to Plymouth Nursery School. So today when I saw a little 3-year-old walking to the car with his dad, I had a flashback because my kids are 20 and 22 now, and not so interested in doing crafts with mom and dad anymore. But I'm thrilled to be here to talk with you, and I'm trying to strike a balance. First, I want to apologize for wearing jeans. I plan to change, but there's a whole thing. In the car at the airport, no one wants. Anyway, so here I am. At about 11:45, so it's been a lovely day. So that's why I'm wearing jeans. Not that half of you cared, but there it is. So I represent Windsor Heights, Clive, and West Des Moines, and I ran for office for the first time in 2016 and lost. I ran against the House Majority Leader. Then I ran again in 2018 and I won. And I do recommend winning over losing. I told you I was going to be here for controversial takes, and that's my first one. But you learn a lot from losing too. And I learned when you lose, you just get back up, you fight back, and you understand the stakes differently. Now you got nothing to lose, right? Now you know the worst thing that could happen is that I would lose and Donald Trump would win. That's my opinion. It happened on the same night. And so when I decided I was never going to run again, my good friend Joel Olson said, hey, maybe don't post something nasty on Facebook because you might want to run again someday. And I said, I am never doing this again. I'm going to post what I want. She's like, maybe just a minute. And so I didn't. And then I was never going to run again. And I was at home watching my computer, watching the debate because I'm cool like that. And they did a collective bargaining debate where they gutted collective bargaining for public sector employees. And I was home watching this on my laptop, and I got furious because I had knocked on 13,000 doors and not one person had told me this was a problem that needed solving. Not one person had told me, can you please go to the Capitol and fix this? So it was a bait and switch. I felt like my opponent had run this race and then gone in and done whatever he wanted, didn't listen to his constituents. So I ran again. And I ran against him for about a year. Then on the filing deadline, he thought maybe a red district would be better than running against me for the rest of the time, so we moved. So then we got to serve together, and I won in 2018, which means that my district is one of those that is a quintessential swing suburban district. That district has been represented by the majority leader in 2018 and the minority leader in 2021. That's how quickly this district has changed. And just this past cycle, after spending $500,000 trying to beat me in 2016, they spent $0 trying to beat me in 2022. So, you know, things change. But what I've learned in all of this is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we are in a time right now in our state where we are having trouble connecting to voters, and we're having trouble helping voters understand the stakes of the election. And that is something that we're working very hard on. So I thought I would walk through kind of what Democrats in the House are doing, what our proposals are, and then talk a little bit about the work we're doing to change the Democratic Party brand in the state, and then take questions, which I assume will be about the election. And as you notice, I didn't mention that because though I'm supposed to talk about it, I don't like to talk about it, but I will take all of your questions. It wasn't a great night. But I'm happy to talk about those questions too, because of course we've got a lot of thoughts on those. But we've done a little bit of research with Iowans of all parties, and we found one thing is a common thread, and that is that Iowans are exhausted by politics. They are sick and tired of politics. They aren't sick and tired of Democrats. They're sick and tired of all of us. They don't want me showing up at their door. They don't want anybody showing up at their door. They want us to leave them the hell alone and get something done. That is a direct quote from a focus group participant. Just do something. They want us to work together. They also don't want extremism. They want middle ground. They want compromise. Their voting patterns don't indicate that that's what they want, but that is what they want. So part of our strategy is to point out that that's not what they're getting. That may have been what they were told they were getting, but it's not what they're getting. And so our job is to remind them of that. So we are very proud of our history here in the state. As Connie mentioned, I spent most of my life in the state. My husband and I did the move to Chicago after graduation thing that everybody does, or you move away. 365 days later, we moved back. Literally on the day we moved to Chicago, a year later. And that was my husband saying he missed Orlando's pizza, and which I do too now, and no commute. He loved that. So we moved back. And so this is the state I grew up in. Back in the day, I lived with my mom, single mom in Florida, and the teacher at the school said, hey, we think Jennifer's ready to skip 4th grade and go right into 5th grade. And my mom said, look, Jennifer's smart. She's not that smart. She's not skip a grade smart. And so she thought, she grew up in Jefferson, went to Jefferson schools, and thought, public schools in Iowa are really so much better, so much stronger. So she sent me here to live with my dad, so that I could go to public schools in Iowa. And I did. I went to Johnston, and we had the first in the nation in education bumper sticker on our car. Public education is on our quarter. It's what we care about. It's why we're here. We're proud of that tradition, and we're disappointed with what's happening, to say the least. We're going to fight back, and you're going to help us. But I'm not going to call on you to do so. We're just going to talk about it. We listened to what Iowans wanted. They also told us about the issues they cared about the most. And we asked them, what do you care about and what do you vote on? Because a lot of Iowans care a lot about clean water, right? We all do. Most Iowans don't vote on clean water. So how can we get to a majority so that then we can work on clean water, but get there on the issues that Iowans care about? We're not lying to them. We're just going to focus on the things they want. So Iowa House Democrats put together a 4-part proposal that for the first time ever, we got our candidates and our incumbents together, and we said, we're going to focus on 4 things. And we call it our people over politics agenda. Because Iowans are sick of politics. They're probably sick of people too, but that's, I can't help that. So people are better than politics. So people over politics. So it's 4 things. And these things are all research-based. They are all things we already believed. And they're things that more than 55% of Iowans want, right? So in theory, this is what we should be doing, is doing what Iowans are asking us to do. One of those things is lowering costs for Iowa families. We can't deny that Iowa families have seen increases in costs, but we can address it in ways that the Republican Party isn't doing. So we work to say, let's make sure that tax cuts go to middle-class families first. Let's make sure that we address affordable housing in a real way. I used to work at Fannie Mae, the mortgage company, not the candy company, and not the one that brought down the economy, but I wasn't there for that part. And affordable housing is really important to me. We did 0 bills on affordable housing in 2022. Unacceptable. We've got businesses coming to us saying, hey, I want to move my company to Eddyville, but there are 500 fewer housing units than I have employees I want to bring in. How can we grow this state if we don't grow housing? So affordable housing. Then we've got childcare. We know this is a crisis. We hear some of our friends across the aisle say we fixed childcare in Iowa. Anyone who knows someone who's trying to send a kid to childcare, ask them if it's easier now than it was a year ago. The answer is no, because they've put some window dressing on the problem, but they haven't truly addressed it. So we want to truly address it. Help small businesses start childcare centers, help communities with grants that help them build childcare centers in small towns. We're going to deal with that. So that's our lowering costs for Iowans strategy. There's a lot more to it. The second thing we want to do is invest in public schools. Yeah. And frankly, we need to defend public education in this state. So this is who we are, right? I was a PTA president at the downtown school, and I got so mad in 2015 when Governor Branstad vetoed some one-time funding for public schools that was part of a deal that was made at the end of session. He vetoed it on the 3rd of July. So I said, well, I'm going to run for school board. And my husband said, that's nice. They don't get to pick how much money they get. And I said, oh, all right, I'm going to run for the legislature. So I did, and I lost, you remember. But fighting for public education is something we've never stopped doing, and we will never stop doing. You heard last year there was a fight for school vouchers in the Iowa House and the Senate. Governor wants it badly. Governor has the majority. She should get what she wants, right? No. No, because Iowans know Democrats and Republican school vouchers are bad for rural Iowa. They're bad for public schools and they're bad for kids. So there were Republicans in the caucus or in the chamber who wouldn't vote for it. Yeah. We also were united as Democrats, all of us against it. At one point, Leader Winchell came over to me during the debate, and I'm like, well, I hope you're not here to ask me for voucher votes. And he goes, I'm not here to ask you for educational savings accounts votes, no. And I said, well, because we're not going to give them to you. He goes, oh, no, I know. It's a waste of time to talk about this with Democrats. That's correct. It's a big waste of time. But we're going to be talking to your freshmen, and we're going to be talking to them about the impact on their communities, because these new Republicans who have come in need to understand the impact of vouchers too. So we are going to defend public education by opposing vouchers and stopping it again. Yeah. Do not forget that it stopped last time because Democrats in the House stood strong and Republicans came with us. We're going to do the same thing. We're also going to invest in public education in ways that haven't been for the last 10 years. This isn't about dollars. This is about kids getting the resources they need. The governor calls this school choice and says that every parent should have a choice about the kind of education their kids get. For once, I agree with the governor completely. Every parent should have a choice about the kind of education their kids get, and that choice should be no matter where they live, no matter what their zip code is, they should be able to go to a public school that is going to be there for their kids and give them a quality education, no matter how their kid looks, no matter how their kid learns, no matter how their parents love each other. Because private schools don't have to accept every kid. So if ever you're having this conversation, remember, the kids who get left behind might be the ones who can't go anywhere else. They don't have the choice. So this is a misnomer, and we're going to fight. And this is part of who we are. We've got teachers, we've got parents, we've got people who care a lot about public education in our caucus. This is a clear, easy one for us. Not easy to stop vouchers, but it's an easy win for us in terms of we know we can agree on this. The third thing is protecting and defending reproductive freedom. So this is an issue. Remember, each of these is 55% or more of Iowans want these things. So it's not just that we're trying to tell them what they need to hear. We're responding to what they said. Iowans want the ability to make their own healthcare decisions, period. They do not want abortion bans. They will get abortion bans. I will tell you, I'm just going to, now, look, I feel friendly here because it's Plymouth, so I'm going to say something I would normally say. I had therapy this morning, and I went to therapy, and I sat down, and I started to cry. And she's like, well, okay, we're off to the races. She's pretty used to this by now. She said, what's the matter? And I'm like, well, if a woman in Iowa has an ectopic pregnancy a year from now, it's my fault that she's going to die. Now, we know that's not true logically, right? But that's how seriously we each take this issue. It is not about winning an election and getting power. It is about keeping women alive. It is about making sure that women have the choices they need. We introduced 4 amendments to an all-out abortion ban last session, and they denied each one on a party line vote. We want to make surely you don't mean if the life of the mother is at risk, you want an abortion ban. Nope, that's not an exception we vote for. Surely you don't mean that if it's a survivor of rape or incest, that abortion's not okay. Nope, voting it down. Surely you don't mean birth control. I mean, you'd want to protect birth control, voted it down. Surely you don't mean in vitro fertilization and keeping those embryos so that they can have a baby someday down the road or discard those embryos if they want because it's theirs, voted it down. So my friends, we're not being hyperbolic when we say that they want to ban abortion outright in the state of Iowa. And we're going to do all we can to stop them. And then they're going to do all they can to keep it going. They're going to want to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in 2024. And my friends, we're going to vote. And we're going to vote it down and we're going to fight back. So that is our third thing. The last thing is legalizing adult use of recreational marijuana. This is one that surprises people sometimes, but I think folks would be surprised by how many people in Iowa want this. It is a product that is already being used. It is a product that is not regulated, and it is a product that we can't keep safe. So there is marijuana being sold in Iowa right now that is laced with fentanyl. It is being sold illegally, and we can't stop it. If it's legal, we can regulate it, right? Secondly, I don't know about you, but I'm a little sick of seeing money go to every state around us. When people come back, well, gosh, I just got to run over to Galesburg, Illinois, where everybody's going all of a sudden, or to South Dakota or Minnesota or Missouri. That's revenue we're losing that we could be getting. And then finally, our prisons are overcrowded. We have too many people in prison who are there for low-level drug offenses. And so our plan does include expungement and releasing people who are there for that. We could then lower the population of our prisons if we could get people out who are there for drug offenses. So my friends, this is about not just getting high, not just about letting Iowans get high. It's about policy and doing what's right for Iowans and what Iowans want. So those are our 4 policy agendas, and those are what we're going to push for this session. And we're going to lose many of them, right? But we're going to get them on the record, and we're not going to stop. Because we didn't go there to vote for their stuff. We went there to represent our people. And there are 36 of us who are going to go there and do that. And then we're going to get 37, 38, 39, and we're going to start fighting back. So we are there to fight for those things. And we remember that politics has gotten in the way in progress in this state. It really has. And we need to do better. What I will tell you is it's going to take a while. The hardest lesson of election night was recognizing that we went backwards and have to fight back again. But the same reason that I cried in my therapist's office today is the same reason we get up and go to work every day. Because nothing is a foregone conclusion until it's signed by the governor. So we are not going to assume anything. There are a lot of people up there who just vote party line, do what they need to do, but we're ready to fight back and hold them accountable. And I call it my doors to the floor strategy. So someone says something on the doors, like I've fixed childcare, and then they come to the Capitol and they vote against it. Or someone says something on the door like I'm pro-choice, then they come to the Capitol and they do something else on the floor. My job is to point it out. And that's what I'm going to do every day. So on election night, I spoke with the majority party. I spoke with Leader Winchittle, and I said, congratulations. That freshman class of yours, which includes an insurrectionist, someone who was at January 6th, which includes election deniers, which includes a person who believes that all corporations should be put in jail, that taxation is theft, and that elections are rigged. That's their caucus. I said, your freshman class is about to become the face of your caucus. If I have anything to do about it, they're going to be the ones who are on TV. They're going to be the ones who are quoted, and we're going to use every single word they say, because that's all we can do is fight back. Because Iowans don't want that either. So I talked a little bit about this idea of how we're going to connect with voters more. And obviously there's a disconnect. I'm going to tell you a couple things. There's not a silver bullet. I've heard so many great ideas in the last 2 months, so many great ideas. All of them have been thought of and have been tried and are not working for A, B, or C reason. But I think the biggest flaw we make is we assume it's going to take one thing. We assume we're going to fix it. And one thing isn't going to fix it. It has to be a holistic approach to reconnecting with voters. This last campaign, we started a program. It's kind of people over politics, essentially. And it's a voter-centric approach to talking to voters. Instead of me walking up to you and saying, hi, Paul, I'm Jennifer, and I'm running for office, I'd love your vote. That is a transaction I've just asked you to have with me, and you don't know who the heck I am or why I'm here, and you'd really like me to get the heck off your porch. So instead, I say, hi, Paul, how are you? Tell me what you care about most when it comes to politics. I'm here to talk politics for 3 minutes. I'm not going to ask much of you. I just want to know what you care about. Paul tells me what he cares about. I can connect it back to what I believe and how I think we can make it better. And then I say, I'm not asking for your vote today. I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask for your vote later because I want to talk more. And it's having conversations with voters, and it's reminding them that we are here for them, we are listening to them, and we don't just want a vote 2 weeks before an election. We want a conversation. There were 14 districts in the House this year that lost, where our candidate lost by fewer than 1,000 votes. It's depressing, and boy, is it exciting, because that's 14 seats I can target right now. That's 14 seats I can go in tomorrow, and when their Republican representative doesn't have a forum, I can hop in and show up and have my members go in and do a forum there to tell voters what's going on. We can be in those districts right now, going to union hall meetings, stopping at county fairs. We can do all that now, before we have a candidate. So my assistant leader team, which by the way, first time ever, all women leading the Iowa House Democrats. First time ever, all women leading any caucus at the Iowa Capitol. So, they were thrilled to hear that I said, so we've got this plan, and it involves you getting in your car, and it involves you going to Red Oak, or it involves you going to Council Bluffs, or it involves you going to Mason City. Well, that's Sharon, but you know what I mean. Because we need us on the road. We need to get out there and do that work. So we're committed to doing that work. But what I'll tell you, and then I'll take questions, is this. It is not going to be easy, but the only way this state is lost is if we give up. The only way this state walks away is if we don't start fighting back right now. No one, somebody said to me, I don't know if you understand this. This is the day after the election. Do you know how upset we are about the election results? Yes. Yes, I really do. Yes. Probably not a lot of people more upset, for example, than me, who's been working my tail off to get these people elected. But we'll listen, we'll have these conversations, because the framework says we have to meet voters where they are. So we're going to meet our friends where they are too. And we're going to fight back. I'm the first woman leader of the Iowa House Democrats, and I'll be the first female speaker of the Iowa House Democrats. And as part of that, we are, I wasn't an applause line, it was just a point. And so there are some things that women do differently than men. We can just admit that. So I had my first ever caucus with my new freshmen, my new caucus. And I called my team, which my senior guys, just 2 guys. They've only worked for men. A couple things, they get a little, like sometimes when I say I'm a little warm in here, I'm 49, they don't know what to do. They open the windows. They're like, make it stop. It's awkward. I don't like it. And so this time, I said, well, I've got an icebreaker for the caucus. And they're like, oh no, you can't do an icebreaker with these people. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do an icebreaker. And then they were very nervous. So I would text them the night before, does anybody have a disco ball? We need this for the icebreaker. Or I text them, I'm like, hey, can you bring a karaoke machine? We need it for the icebreaker. And they were like, oh my God, what are you doing? I was like, it's very dramatic. It's a trust fall. It's fine. It's gonna be great. And then the next morning I showed up and I had 36 packets of seeds. Now, seeds are not easy to find in December. So my little idea took a little longer than I thought, because I thought you could go to Menards and get seeds, but no, you have to go to Rome. Spend $80 on seeds because they're organic, because that's all that's left. Anyway, And so on each one, I put a question. And then you introduced yourself, you answered the icebreaker question, and even the grumps had to answer. It was great. And then I said, the reason you have seed packets is because of the Mexican proverb, which says, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. And we're starting right now to grow back. But I spoke with Senator Cory Booker yesterday and told him this story. And he said, the difference is seeds grow alone. You're not alone. We have each other. We have people who believe in these causes, and that's what we're here to do. We're going to fight back. What choice do we have? So I am feeling, on election night, I gave a speech to the reporters, and I said, I feel great, because I think that the caucus of the Iowa House Democrats, we have 15 freshmen, 15 new members who are ready to go, ready to fight. And we are the future of our party, and we are the future of this state. When you look around this room, I see future senators, future governors, future congresspeople, future state house leaders, and that's how we're going to build back. The pendulum will swing. I believe in my bones that they're going to go too far, which they've done for years, but that this time we're going to make it work and we're going to connect it and we're going to start to build back. I feel confident in this and I am ready for this. That doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean it's not exhausting. It doesn't mean I cry the second I sit down in my therapist's office. But what it does mean is that we can have these conversations and we're all rowing in the same direction. We might not agree on the size of the oar or what the boat looks like, but we know the goal. And if we can get there, we can get there together. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also looking forward to your questions. So I'm so glad you guys had me here today. Thank you very, very much. Questions? Did I soften the room by telling you I cried, so now you want to ask me a mean question? I didn't do it on purpose, but if that's what worked, I guess, you know. You
So
handle it, Connie. Yep.
If you will raise your hand, and I already see several, and I will bring you the microphone. If you're online, you can also ask questions by putting them in the chat. Please don't shout out until you have a microphone in your hand.
Right.
Thank you.
My gut reaction after this last election cycle was the Democrats were just too damn nice. And I think the reason the Republicans have been so successful is that they play on the irrational. They're preying on fear. And I don't know how we combat that, because it's something that's in the gut. This is something that you can't counter with facts and figures, which Democrats are great at doing.
Because we believe in the truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll just give you a brief example. When Deidre Jajier was debating the governor, and there was some mention about COVID, you know, nobody said that we lost more people to COVID than Illinois and Minnesota, far bigger states regarding population. We are just too damn nice. And you said, you know, we need to fight back. Well, I'm not sure we can afford to be nice anymore. Anyway, that's not really a question, but
I
I'd
agree.
like to hear you.
Look, I mean, we got to fight. And I think there's a way to do this without getting back into the mud. You know, I know Michelle Obama said they go low, we go high. That's hard when they're denying the humanity of my nephew, for example. Or when they're denying the humanity of other people, when they say they don't exist. And I just said this in front of the Des Moines Partnership. I was there with a Republican senator, and he said, I'm bipartisan. I just had lunch with a Democratic senator. And I said, well, I can disagree with you on tax policy, and I can disagree with you on abortion, but I can't disagree with you on whether or not women have a right to make their own decisions, or whether or not someone you are demonizing is human. And so that's where our problem lies, right? Is that we aren't fighting on the same playing field. So what we have to do is point out the extremism. But we don't have to do it by calling names and getting into their level. And I know that's not what you're suggesting. We have to do it by saying, is this what you want, or is that what you want? Do you want us focused on whether or not kids who are just trying to live their own lives in their own authentic ways can play sports? Or do you want us to focus on making sure that your disabled mother has health care? Which of those things matters? So it's redefining the stakes of the election and not letting them distract. Also, controversial take. If the Iowa caucuses are really gone forever, great. Because now we no longer, we can separate ourselves from DC Democrats a little bit. We can say, fine, you guys, you want to call me Nancy Pelosi? You still will, but it has a little less relevance when I'm not getting my picture shaken with 19 Democrats who are running for president every year, trying to make lemons out of lemon, or lemonade out of lemons, right? So there are opportunities here for us to separate, and we're trying to build and define what the Iowa Democrat is. So I talked to you about this framework we're doing, this branding framework. It was a success. We also did more research this year in different ways that was a success. We're going to build on that, but it doesn't happen in a cycle. I have said to everyone, in fact, I said to a very large donor in our state, now, I'm glad you like this branding proposal. I don't want to call from you. I got a little gutsy this day. I said, I don't want to call from you on the day after the election saying it didn't work. Because rebranding takes 10 years. It takes time. It's not nothing and then everything, but it builds and it grows. And so we need to do this over time. And a lot of people talk about Democrats needing a message. And I disagree. Democrats need a brand first. Because you can be Walmart and start selling Rolls Royces. But no one will believe you're a luxury car dealer. And they won't come in and buy your Rolls Royce until you change who you are as a brand. And they can trust you to sell you that Rolls Royce. So until we can convince Iowans that we're listening, they're not going to hear a word we say. So this is part of this process. It's urgent. We got to go quickly. But I feel like we can draw contrast, point out extremism, and still take the high road. But we'll see. But look, I've got a little feisty a couple times. So I'm happy to be mean, too. I got things to say. Yes. Hi, Mike.
Jennifer, so good to see you. First of all, I want to underscore what you told us about door knocking and talking to other voters. And one of the best things I found in my experience was to take a notebook along with me. And I asked the voter when they answered the door, what's driving your vote this year? They want to tell you.
They do.
And so I write it down. And then whoever I'm door knocking for, I give that information to that candidate so they can get that information. And you'd be surprised what people are wanting their politicians to perform for them.
That's right.
And so, and they feel like they're part of the process when they know that their issues are getting to the candidates.
People want to be heard.
Oh, yeah. And second thing, I want to talk a little bit about taxes and what our governor is bragging about. The tax cut that she proposed and got passed, there are about 4,500 millionaires in the state of Iowa. Each of them are getting $63,000 a year in tax cuts, like they need it, you know? And the rest of us, you're not going to like this. You get about 300 to 600 a year from that same tax cut.
When it arrives in 4 or 5 years, if there's any money left.
Yeah.
Because they get last.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one issue that we've got to tackle.
Sure.
Yeah. And all of those tax cut savings that they're talking about, that's ballooning our rainy day fund, that's supposed to go to public education.
That's right. That's right. I mean, this money is being held in a bank account when schools are starving. That is simply unacceptable. Let me talk about just quickly about door knocking. So a lot of you know Ken Judge, maybe you do. He's out in Dallas County. He's famous for knocking doors, very good at it. We used to have a little game when we were freshmen, and we'd be out after session and we'd say it was going to be a drinking game. Every time Ken mentioned something he heard on the doors, we're going to drink. And we realized that our livers could not handle it because Ken likes to talk about doors. And so we kind of teased him a little bit, but you know what he does? He knocks doors year round. He knocks 12,000 doors himself between September of 2021 and November of 2022. He writes letters to everybody he talks to, puts them in a drawer and mails them on October 15th. Because Ken Judge does this in a red district, a district that's a +5 Republican district, he was ahead by 30 points a month before the election. They didn't target him. It can be done, right? We can do this if we talk to voters. And then Heather Mattson, famous for door knocking, won again this year. We're thrilled about it. But on election day, she has a habit or a tradition of going to a mobile home community and knocking on the doors of this low voter turnout community. And on election day, she and her friends convinced 12 people to vote that weren't going to vote that day. Got them rides, made sure they were there. Heather won by 23. So if anyone says door knocking doesn't work, I will argue you. My favorite thing to do, though, is to go to a place and say, who says the Democrats were dumb for not knocking doors in 2020? Then people would raise their hand. I'd be like, yep, how many door knocking shifts do you do in this session? Because if you think it's so important, I hope you're knocking, which I know you are, Mike. So door knocking is pretty important.
Rumor has it that nothing's gonna get done until vouchers are passed. How are you gonna, like you say, people are sick of nothing getting done. We gotta be able to multitask.
Yeah, well, we have lots of ideas about things that could happen at the Capitol. If they want to pout and sit back until their voucher scheme passes, which it won't, we can fight that fight all day long. The longer they wait, the more time we have to give data to Republicans about why it's bad for their districts. The more time we have to show them the maps that show them about why homeschooling would, and vouchers going to homeschools would devastate communities. Why schools would close down, there'd be tumbleweed. Anybody been to a small town where the school closes? The one my dad grew up in, the school is gone. 2 years later, all but a church is the only business in town. The Dollar General popped up last year, obviously. But I mean, it's devastating. And we need legislators to know this. It is not the foregone conclusion they want you to think it is. And there are very smart people fighting every day. And one of those people is here, and that's Mary Jane Cobb. She is fighting this every single day. And she is the reason we didn't have him last time. And she's the reason we're not going to get him this time. Let's give Mary Jane some credit for this. Even though she didn't give me a ride home from the airport last night, I'll still forgive her. Yes. Hi, Bryce.
Hi there. I want to reinforce your observation with regard to knocking on doors. Done that a few times myself, and many people in this room have done that. Knocking on doors is a transaction. A transaction is where both parties get something of value. I tell candidates they get their best stories, real stories, by knocking on doors, and that's why you do it. That's why some people in this room have knocked on thousands of doors. The second thing that they get from that is that they have to believe a person has to answer the door. One of the things that I think it is important to do is for the Democrats to say it is of value to you to answer your door because our candidates are coming to your neighborhood. They want to talk with you and they want to get something of value to you and from you.
Yeah.
So I think that's exactly the way you fight. It's not a fight. I don't like the word fight, by the way.
I really do right now.
I know. It's
I'll get better.
But in any event, you've got the right idea.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. And I will tell you that, it's not rocket science, but there is somebody who never meets Kim Reynolds or Deidre Gier, but sees them on TV all the time, but will then cross over and vote for Jennifer Konfrst because she showed up or she met her at Hy-Vee or they helped them with their workforce, issue or whatever. And so they actually see the person. And that's what the advantage we have at this level of government. She's walking. Connie Ryan, everyone. Oh,
Hi.
hi.
When you took a vote on the vouchers and there were the Republicans, there were 5 Republicans who were voted against vouchers. And Reynolds chose candidates to run against them. 4 of them won. And so I'm wondering if that's a threat that she's going to use in even a bigger way this year to try to get her own way.
Let me just be clear. Kim Reynolds will stop at nothing until she gets school vouchers and she bans abortion outright. Those are the 2 things she will stop at nothing to do. But that doesn't mean she's a queen or in charge. There are separate houses of government for this reason. And last year, my closing day speech, we actually never voted on vouchers on the floor. She just knew they were opposed to it behind the scenes because they don't like to bring up votes they're not going to win. Although they did once last year, and that was amazing. But they have a lot of, she has 4 heads on her wall, if you will, about look what I did. I primaried this person and I beat him. So you got to help me out. Problem is, I don't think she vetted all these candidates super well. And she might regret that some of them are there. They might not all think they owe her as much as she thinks they do. And there are new members coming in that they worked real hard to get here who aren't for vouchers. So this is an issue that is unpopular, bad for schools. This is political. And she has decided she needs this feather in her cap. She will not rest. But I gave a speech on the floor of the House my last day, and I got in a little bit of trouble, which is good. And I said, I would like to applaud this chamber right here, because this chamber did our job. We stopped vouchers because that's not what the majority of Iowans want, and we represent the majority of Iowans. And so we didn't pass vouchers because that's our job, is to not just do what the governor says, but to do what we think is right. And then I bashed the Senate a little bit. That's where I got in trouble. I said, the Senate, they did it. We didn't do it. Because if you can throw the Republicans, if you can get them fighting amongst themselves, it's always nice. That's what I was trying to do. But we were an independent body. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I'm not trying to be Mary Sunshine. I think it's clear. I'm not Mary Sunshine today. But I'm telling you, these vouchers are very likely to die again this session because of the work Mary Jane and her team are doing, because of the work we're doing, and because Iowans don't want it. And that should matter most. I don't care if it helps Kim Reynolds gets on some national stage. It's not good for Iowa.
We have a question online.
Oh gosh, I never know who this is from. Hi.
Hi, from Michael. Will IPERS be privatized and maybe replaced with 457 planes?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope not. And we're going to fight like hell against it. There's a threat to IPERS all the time. I don't love Robbie Smith being in charge of IPERS and the treasurer's office. Mike Fitzgerald did a really phenomenal job managing that fund. A lot of Iowans depend on, rely on, and paid into IPERS. And it's theirs, not ours, to mess around with. And so, look, at the end of the day, we're all going to have to reach out. We're going to have to make our voices heard. We're going to have to be loud. We're going to have to express our opinions, whatever those opinions might be, to legislators. There are anti-public school legislators in Polk County. There are people who want to defund IPERS in Polk County. Contact them. Tell them why it's bad. We have to let them know about the groundswell of support. If I can hear people on the floor saying, oh my gosh, these IPERS people keep contacting me, we have won, my friends, because they are irritated and don't want to do it. So, I mean, I think that we have a voice here. And that's, I guess, the biggest lesson is that we can't stop.
Hi, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, the tax cuts that are gradually increasing are there. Is there a good way to connect those to the lack of decreasing services, the poorer quality of care in our nursing care facilities? Of course, public education too, but so many things that people totally rely on, and we're not even to the flat tax.
Right.
And the extreme effects that will have, especially on poor, medium income, and how to make that connection between more tax rates for the wealthy and the actual effects.
So here's the problem with tax cut communication. So I teach political communication at Drake, and we've done some research on this. Iowans see fewer taxes in their, they see more money in their pockets, but they don't experience the lack of services as acutely. So they see the tax cut as a personal gain and the public services as a collective loss that they don't feel on a daily basis. So it's very hard to connect it to what they're losing, right? Because it's not immediate. The tax cut's immediate except for the 400,000 Iowans who will not get one, and except for those of us who are middle income who won't get it for 4 or 5 years. But property taxes is a different story. So they're talking a lot this year about wanting to change property taxes. This is going to be their big push this year. And we can start talking about, I said this to a reporter, the party that really wants to defund the police is the one that wants to cut local services so much that they can't afford police anymore. So we need to make sure that that connection is made at the property tax at local level, because you can tell if there are fewer services in your own small town, much better than you can if the Department of Education has been underfunded, right? And so it's easier at this local level with property taxes. So that's going to be something we'll talk about more with property taxes.
We have another question online.
Will there once again be a proposal to restrict or eliminate faculty tenure at the Regents institutions?
I hope not. They're going to beat up on the Regents a lot this year. I was at this Des Moines Partnership event, and a representative who's the new Ed Appropriations chair said that he wants to make sure that every college degree has a monetary value in order to get money from the state for that degree. And anyone who understands higher education knows that is the exact opposite purpose of higher education. It is not trade school, right? I think we live better when we have a society of critical thinkers and people who ask hard questions. And I, as a professor, get calls from employers who said, hey, can you teach them more than just how to write? Can you teach them how to think? Because I need them to do the job in a way that I don't have to babysit them all the time. So we've integrated critical thinking into every one of our courses because it's that important. So to infringe on the actions and the work of regents is fundamentally offensive to me. To tie it to funding is fundamentally offensive to me. As a parent who's paying full tuition at the University of Iowa, it's offensive to me because, you know, it used to be that 75% of funding came from the state, 25 from Iowa families. Now it's flipped. All this to say that in addition to all of those other hits on the regents' institutions, they're becoming punching bags. This tenure thing comes up in the Senate every year. It is damaging and devastating. All we have to do is point out the grant money that gets lost to the state because people won't come here and bring research dollars. So it's really Iowa State and Iowa that are going to really have a financial loss if that 10-year plan goes through. But I haven't heard anything about it this year so far.
I'm going to walk over to Karen, but while I'm walking, talk about guns.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost on the gun amendment, those of us who believed that it should fail. But we're hearing all over the place that they're going to do a whole host of pieces of legislation. Have you heard anything specific?
Not specific. I'm afraid they have big plans. I'm having trouble figuring out what's left that they can do. The gun amendment, like I'm just going to be honest here, in many ways, some of our national partners who could have really helped us with this didn't help. And I had a call with a national group, an activist group on October 10th. And they told me all the research that says, Leader Konfrst, it's great. People like this amendment, because you know, it's only in 4 states now, 3 before us. They like the amendment on paper. We educate them, and then they vote against it. And I said, well, great. Where was this? Where was the education? Well, we were focused on federal policy. So it's a loss that is to the fault of no one in this state. It is because our national partner, and this, I've told them this is not me being mean. It's just, look, there are consequences. I said, what's your budget to help us defeat this amendment? And they said $0. So it was a lost cause, but we did all we could to fight it because it will be bad for Iowa. Missouri had a 100% increase in gun deaths when they instituted the strict scrutiny amendment. It's hard to communicate. It's hard to mention. Democrats introduced the Second Amendment to the the U.S. Constitution as a replacement for this one. Fine, just put the Second Amendment in our Constitution. They said no. So the door is really wide open now because any law that gets tested in the courts now has to be held to a higher standard and is likely to get struck down. So that's kind of where I think their lane is that they're trying to find things that they can try now that no longer will get challenged by the courts. But I don't know what that looks like. And I'm sorry to be negative Nelly about this, but I think it's important to understand that when we hear about people not investing in the state or people walking away, there are real consequences. And this is one of them. Yeah.
Hi. You know, back in about 75, I think we had maybe 2,500 or so people who were incarcerated in our prison system. We have approximately the same population here in Iowa, approximately the same crime rate, but we now have approaching 9,000 people in our prison system because everybody wanted to get tough on crimes. That rhetoric seemed to really crop up a lot in this last campaign. And, you know, I would think that Republicans who are supposed to be the bearer of fiscal responsibility, would be really wanting to look carefully at all of that. Anyway, your thoughts on what do we do about mass incarceration in Iowa?
You know, it's been fascinating to me that crime was such an issue this legislative, this campaign cycle. There's a national strategy out there right now, which is to instill fear Who was saying that? You were saying that. Instill fear in Americans, make them afraid of criminals, make them afraid of people who don't look like them, and make them afraid of people who, well, frankly, are part of the LGBTQ community. There's no other way to say it. And fear, and then to demonize public education as part of that. So this was part of a national strategy that they did. But when it comes to what we can do about it, that's part of why we want this legalization of marijuana. We think that will help a lot. But I think we also need to look into what we're doing, to build community, what we're doing to find other ways, interventions early on with kids. There are a lot of things we could do. Drug courts and veterans courts and things like that are wonderful for this. And they're very underfunded across the state. But there are courts that are designed to help intervene before someone goes and gets incarcerated. So I think we need to treat people more like human beings who can be helped rather than like people who need to be put in jail. There are people who need to be put in jail. I am not saying that, YouTube. Don't cut this and say I did. What I'm saying is that we need to think long and hard about the way we do this and see if there are ways we could do it better.
Hello.
Hi, friend.
How are you?
Good. Johnson Dragon alumni here.
Woohoo. So I was at the United Way breakfast this morning, and you talked about the plan for, like you talked about childcare, affordable housing. And I was intrigued by the affordable housing because it really showed disparities among our Black and Brown families and their ability to be homeowners. And so, the one thing, I'll just point this out because I wrote it down, I felt it was really important. Somebody on the panel said, you should be asking the question, does your housing look like your jobs? So when you talked about the one employer who said, gosh, we have 500, we don't have the housing to meet the demand of our jobs. But that also brings me to what can we and what should we, what opportunities are there to really lift our Black and Brown Iowans and support them to make sure they have opportunities to be successful when we see just these disparate outcomes for these communities.
So much of it's about understanding and working to address systemic inequities in our, in our financial system, in our, job system, things like that. But also I think it's important to look at this issue holistically. So instead of thinking about we need affordable housing, people picture a big apartment building in their backyard, right? That's not what affordable housing needs to be. Affordable housing could be the door I knocked on in Burlington that is a blighted property that needs approximately $20,000 worth of work to get back up into living shape. And how can we help that person or someone rebuild that home, get it refurbished, and get into that home? How can we make that possible? My work was always in affordable housing when I was at Fannie Mae, and a lot of the issues were around down payments, were around credit history, which is a systemic issue that addresses Black and Brown communities more, and around remodeling, rehab, like keeping the house up. And there are ways to address each of those with public-private partnerships like the United Way. I'm glad they're mentioning this. So did the partnership, by the way. Lots of people talking about affordable housing and workforce. And we need to look holistically at the issue. So what are we doing to make sure people have access to better credit information early on, making sure that we're easy credit restrictions or being creative with credit restrictions. We all got real tamped down after the housing crisis. And that's when sort of an affordable housing crisis started underwater because so much was happening where people who used to be able to get homes no longer could, and some of them shouldn't have. But therefore, in an overreaction that the market did, we just made it extra hard to get homes. And we need to loosen some of that. But we have to think holistically about what we want to be as a community. Do we want to be a place where people own their own homes, take pride in their residences, and grow and build and stay? Or do we want to be a place where people rent month to month and hop around and move and find better opportunities somewhere else? Everyone tells me, every employer says they need employees. That's the number one thing I hear from every business I talk to. I represent Windsor Heights, Clive, and West Des Moines. There are businesses all over those towns. They want workforce. Tax cuts aren't going to fix it. People need a place to live, they need a place to send their kids, and they need to know that the state welcomes them. We cannot afford to turn people away. And that's what we do with lack of affordable housing, lack of childcare, dismantling public education, and terrible, hateful legislation. Hi.
It seems like election after election, the Democrats get all of the big city counties, and the rural counties always go Republican because farmers in that area always think their best interest is in the Republican Party, and it usually isn't. But I know that when Obama was here, he picked up a lot of rural counties. So what did he do that the Democrats aren't doing to pull that vote again? Or
So you're
did I
probably not going
read
to love
that
this
wrong?
answer, but he was Barack Obama. I mean, in many ways, that's what he did. Like, he is a seminal figure that you can't replicate. And so it's hard to try to replicate what he did in 08 because he is. And I'm not trying to be flippant, it's just true. But I will tell you also that our demographics in the state are changing in a way that will benefit people in those communities. 53% of Iowans now live in 10 counties. That means we are no longer a majority rural state. That doesn't mean we forget about rural Iowa. It doesn't mean we don't care about them. It's just that when we're talking about a majority of Iowans live in cities and suburbs and small towns. So we need to remember them too. And that's where we can have these conversations anywhere. We're better for them on farming. We're better for them on property taxes. We're better for them on a lot of stuff. Let's go tell them. But this school conversation is one that we cannot stress enough how much people need to be held accountable if they vote for something that will decimate a rural school, a small town, a community school, because that is something that is a place where we can say, we were here for you, rural Iowa, they weren't. And so I think that there are a lot of ways we have to get there. Again, it's going to take some time. Hi.
Hi there. This just came to me, and I thought I wanted to ask it because I think that a lot of people in the room might have the same question. We live in Indianola. We really don't have any representation in the state legislature. We don't have a senator. We don't have a representative. How do people in this room that are in the same situation, how do we get heard by our legislature now with where it's at?
It's incredibly frustrating, I know. A couple things. You do have representation, and you need to remind them that you do. So they don't just represent the Republicans in their district. They're supposed to represent all of us. So reminding them of that, holding them accountable, letters to the editor that might say, hey, how come I haven't gotten a call back from this person? Hold them accountable publicly. Why aren't you having a forum? How come you're not meeting us and telling us what's happening in the legislature? Why did Representative Konfrst have to come to Indianola and give us a legislative update because Representative so-and-so wouldn't? Hold them accountable, and then also contact them, keep track of your contacts, and contact us too. So one of the things we always want to say is some of you live in districts where you know your representative agrees with you. That doesn't mean Ann Hurton, for example, knows that her representative agrees with her all the time. Proud constituent. But that doesn't mean don't tell me what you think, because I can then go to somebody and say, hey, I'm on the floor right now and I've heard from 58 people in my district who told me they want this. And their voices matter just as much as your red district constituents have. We should be able to have both voices heard on the floor. So reach out to people who aren't your representatives, we can help, and then reach out to your representative. And then the one thing I'll say is if you don't hear from your representative and you need constituent services, reach out to me and we'll get it connected. Because the things we do for our constituents are the most important, and sometimes people don't serve their constituents the way they need to. I'm not saying that's true in your community. I'm just saying sometimes that's true. We'll help.
Help me to thank Representative Leader Konfrst.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how glad I am to have Jennifer in the House, but also as leader of one of the caucuses. She, as you have just witnessed, is amazing. And we are grateful for all of your service for the people of Iowa. So thank you. Don't get up. We have two more things. Bridget's going to say something, and then I have an announcement.
Yeah, right. How's everyone doing? Good? Okay, great. This is the last time we'll all be together in 2022. So I just wanted to thank you all for showing up for Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, for doing all sorts of things that you do to make Iowa a better place. Last week, we had a big year-end campaign. Were folks following along with that? Okay, well, I'm happy to report that we've now raised over $40,000 for that campaign, yes. But I have to give another plug that even though we totally surpassed our goal, we have a lot of work to do in 2023. And so if you haven't given a year-end gift, I humbly ask you to give. You can give online at interfaithallianceiowa.org or return your envelope that you got in the mail. Or you can give me a little phone call too. I'm happy to do it over the phone. But thank you again for all you do. And I'm going to pass it over to Connie for this announcement that I'm excited about too.
Thank you, Bridget. Before I do the announcement, I just want to say thank you also. And all of the things that Representative Konfrst talked about, not all of them, but most of the things that she talked about is work that Interfaith Alliance of Iowa and Action Fund does. You know that public education and reproductive health care and all of the big major issues. And so we are going to need you in this work in the legislative session. So we will resume our Friday emails that we always do during legislative session. I know that you just can't wait till those come out. And we try our hardest to give you factual information about the issues at the State House and how to talk with your legislators about those issues. We're going to do a more concerted effort on bringing folks up to the Capitol and choosing to do that if you feel comfortable doing that and doing that safely. More on Mondays. We'll be back both in person and online. So we're excited to be able to do that and to bring that back to the Capitol. Bridget's going to be doing some organizing around the issues, particularly around reproductive health care and public education issues, but the scope of issues that we're doing. So we very much need you in the game on that, and we're grateful for all of the work that you do. The big announcement is that Crossroads in January, our speaker is going to be Ray Kabazu. So please come back for that. We are delighted to have her. The title of her, it's actually going to be a conversation with me and then questions, is and now what in her retirement. So she's going to talk about her work. She's going to talk about her future. So hopefully you will come back on, I think it's January 20th, whatever the third Friday is, and hope you'll come back and be with us. So in the meantime, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being online, and have a great weekend and a great rest of your year. Thank you.